Go.
This is an interview for my project.
An interview with who?
My Gran. Gran.
Huh.
What is your full name?
Mildred Martha Wiggins Carson. Ooh, what a name.
What name do you go by?
Gran. Because I have grandchildren. You know how many?
How
16. Plus great-grandchildren. How many, Philip? 20.
Where do you live?
This is Grans City, North Carolina.
How you ever live anywhere else besides here?
Yes, I lived in Virginia. 2 times I lived in Virginia. I was married in Virginia, and then I had one little child named Helen Carson. Helen Martha Carson. You know what the Martha stands for? There was a good singer named Martha Carson. But however, I was older than her, but we named my Helen after her. Me and Pops Carson.
What community do you live in?
I'd say I live in the Midway community, 4 miles out from Grans City. And I love it.
When were you born?
I was born the third month, March 10th, 1926.
Are you married? What is your spouse's name?
I had a spouse whose name was Pops. Since I'm Gran, he was Pops, but he was really Ed Carson. Ed H for Henry, Ed Henry Carson.
How many children do you have? What's their names?
I have 8 children. My oldest child is named Helen, who is a Stiles now, and Faye Cook, Sue is Sue King, and George Harvey Carson, my first baby boy. Oh, they said you had a little boy, and I said, oh, you just wanted me to make me feel good. See, I already had 3 little girls. Then there came Jean, and then Linda, and Phyllis, the baby girl, and then there came Philip, 4-pounder. Well, you know what the doctor told me? He said, that ain't much people, is it?
What kind of job do you have?
Oh. I've had child care. I followed that for 3 years after raising my own children. When I was old enough to retire, I didn't know I could go to work. One day, Susan said, Gran, I need a substitute. Sure enough, Log Cabin had me for about 3 years now. Then they kindly dissolved and had no more at the same place. So when I came home, Pop said, Mom, if you want to make some money, why don't you go to Tuckasegee Mills? So I went to Tuckasegee Mills for 11 years. So that made, and since Pops is gone and I'm left alone, I don't have an outside job. I have well, I guess I do, but she's waiting on me. She sent me to see about the cat today. That's all right.
What is your spouse's?
Hmm.
Read the question.
What is your spouse's? When did your grandma come to?
What is it? Occupation?
What is your spouse's occupation?
My pops was a plumbing and a heating man. He was C.H. Carson Plumbing and Heating, and he started in Virginia. One day he was working for St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, and he and Mrs. Meekins was in business together. Somehow the church paid off $1,800 at one time, and I thought, I was supposed to take it to the bank, you know. I thought, good gracious, that's too much money for me to carry around. But raising all the children, we needed all the money Pops could make, so he built a house. Matter of fact, he built 2 houses in Virginia, and then he built this house. Just the same year Jean was born.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Oh, yeah. I only have 5 sisters living. That means six of us girls are living. I don't have any brothers alive anymore, but I had some wonderful brothers. Luther Wiggins, Byron Wiggins. Then a little baby who died before I was born named Lester. Then I had Wade Wiggins. He was a fine, fine man.
Tell me your wedding story.
My what?
Wedding story.
Woo! I just told it to Miss Helen a while ago. We was in Virginia, and in the year of 1943, my sister Myrtle finished school. She graduated. Well, it's time for somebody to get out of the house and go job hunting, you know. So our mama said, you can go to Luther's and work in the shipyard. Well, by the way, one graduate couldn't go by herself, so they got a little undergraduate to go with her, which was me, you know. And we went off to Virginia, and Pops, Ed Carson, went on the same train I went on, and there was Floyd Smith, went on the same train along with Myrtle. That's the way we sat, you know. We didn't know we was wonderful, good friends, me and Pops. Friends was all, because I was 5 years younger than him, and he liked older girls, you know. So I was 16, going on 17, and it was during the war, World War II, and in Virginia, I had a job at the Woolworths dime store, or variety store, I guess you'd say, which was a big, big store, F.W. Woolworth. And it was on Washington Avenue. It was near the port of embarkation, so during the war, you don't run around by yourself if you're a girl, just a young lady. Pops was always there to grab my hand when they let us out at night to go home. And by the way, he didn't like nobody else seeing me home either, so I told him one day, though, I had a date. Well, it worried me, and I said, well, what would you do? He said, well, if I had a date, I'd fill it. Well, what will you do? Well, I'll go. Well, I can go see Floyd or just Floyd Smith or just do anything. But come time to be out of the store, guess what? Grab my hand. Anyway, on the 16th day, by the way, we said we'd be married on the 24th. Told each other, let's be married by the 24th. And Pops even said, if it don't work out, we'll get a divorce. I don't think I ever told anybody that. But really and truly, it did work out. We went to Hampton, Virginia, because we lived in Elizabeth City County. First, we didn't know any better, so we went to the Masonic Lodge to find out, can we get a license and can we be married in Newport News? Nope. We have to go. So we catch a streetcar. You know what a streetcar is, James?
Nope.
Well, it has rails and it runs on, I guess, don't it, Philip? Anyway, we caught a streetcar and went to Hampton, Virginia, and found where we should be there. Well, this justice of the peace got up, and his wife came in. His wife came in to witness the wedding, and he told Pops, he said, meow, 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 meow. You know. Yeah, Pops said, I know. Well, he signed the little certificate, and we was married. The mama come in about that time, and she witnessed it, see. But they didn't ask me, do you take this man? Or they didn't ask him, do you take this woman to be your wedded husband? And they just automatically knew that was what was going on. So James, that's just a big, long story. And we caught a streetcar and went back home. Went to Desi and Frank's house. Desi is Pops' sister. And we had lunch. Now, we did all that in one morning. But I told my brother Luther, I put on my dress and my hat, mind you. And I said, Luther, how do I look? Woke him up, because he slept during the day. Well, he said, you better get that rig off and get down to that store. No, we're getting married today, you know. So Hazel was in the mountains. Here we go. So that was the day we was married.
Okay, here we go.
Go. Mountain heritage experience. What was your house like when you were growing up?
Oh, we had an upstairs and a downstairs, and I slept upstairs most of the time. We had a kitchen, a living room with a fireplace. That fireplace and the kitchen wood stove was our only heat. But we didn't suffer. No.
Have our schools changed from what you were like when you... Have our schools
just a bit.
Have our schools changed from what they were like when you
The younger.
Was he a young girl?
A whole lot. Matter of fact, we had one teacher for 7 grades one time, and there was just several people in each grade up to the 7th grade. And guess what? One teacher. First few minutes, maybe he'd have spelling, and then, we always started out with the devotion. I always started out with Mr. Otterly Smiley singing songs of praise to the good Lord. Really, I love that part.
Did you go to church during your childhood days?
All the time. Guess what? I walked from the Wiggins Cove, which the Fortners are on now, over to Laurel Branch Church, and it was located where Laurel Branch Cemetery is now. And would you believe we went over the same grounds right down there and picked huckleberries on our way. I walked with my dad and my sisters, whoever was going that day. Most of the time it was everybody was going to church that could walk several miles, you know.
Did your family raise a garden?
Every year was Mama's delight. Get down there and pull weeds and put them along with picket fence, you know. And she always had a good garden. She'd raise peas, potatoes, radishes. We never raised many carrots, but we always had apple trees around, and they paid off because everybody liked apples in my family.
Did your family, are there any special recipes? Special family recipes?
Recipes? My mama always had a cow, and she churned butter, and she put the butter in a drawer. We didn't have electricity, so we didn't have any power. So she put the butter in a drawer, and she always saved the spoon for me. And I would go get some cornbread and get that butter off of that spoon that my mama saved for me. Go to the garden and get myself an onion. I would have a little feast, you know. I always look forward to her saving me the butter spoon. So much fun. That tied me over till supper.
What were your hobbies? What did you do for fun?
Well, with brothers and sisters, we played Bum Bum Bum, Here I Come, What's Your Occupation? Most anything. Well, get busy and get it done. What we did was pantomime what we was doing. Philip, James, Harvey. So that was a good one. Then good game. Bum bum bum, here I come. What's your occupation? Almost anything. We'll get to work and get it done. So we'd pantomime what we was doing, like maybe we was chopping wood or something, and nobody, and they guessed it, you know. And then we would run back, and if they caught us, well, that was the end of that kind of game, you know. And let's see, we played Simon Says. Do you ever play Simon Says, James?
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Well, we played Simon Says too, and we'd hold hands. We had somebody in school that had a brother up in Michigan, and they sang did you ever? I thought I'd surely remember that. That lived in Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo was somewhere up in Michigan, and we just happened to learn that. We'd go round and around in a circle. It was sort of like tap hand, you know, like you go in a circle and you smack somebody and then you run around till. Anyhow, that wasn't much
Sort
of
of
a
like
game.
duck, duck, goose, Jay.
Yeah,
Put your feet down. It's
all
time.
right.
Did your dad make you make your toys?
Dad used to make toys out of corn stalks. He would peel the outside off and lay the little sticks down here, and then he'd put a little piece that long for a head, and then he'd put a body, and then he'd take these little sticks and he'd make legs, and sometimes he'd make horses, and sometimes he'd make little people, and so on. I saw him do that. And again, he would do what they call whittling. They would whittle out a little wooden toy. You're lucky if you ever got one, though. It was for the baby, I think. We always had another baby, you know. My folks had 12 children, James. Where Pops and me only had 8.
It's time to have another break.
Another break. Is that not all?
No, we're on the air.
Hmm?
Okay. What was your favorite thing to play with?
Oh, I liked a doll. I never had a really nice doll till I was 8 years old. And my dad and the preacher was headed for church, and I was catching up with them. And I fell over a sharp, pointed piece of wood and cut my leg. I have a scar, big scar, where I cut my leg on that wooden thing. Well, by the way, Jamesy, we couldn't go to the doctor till the next day. So it just hurt all night long. We walked about a mile and caught the train, went to Dr. Bryson, and he was in the vicinity of the video den now. And about the time he got it stitched up, I said, I heard the train, and I said, woo, woo. He said, what, did that hurt? I said, no, I was just mocking the train. My daddy said, how much to owe you, Doc? When he got all them stitches done, you know. He said, oh, not one thing. Says, give your little girl here $8 so she can have a doll for Christmas. And guess what? My daddy saw that I had an $8 doll, and I could pat her on the back and she'd cry, Mama, Mama. So that was my best Christmas dolly, because most of the time they wasn't made out of good materials, and they didn't cost that much, and then they wasn't very good either. But that was my best toy for that Christmas. Me 8-year-old.
Did your doll ever die? I mean,
What?
did your doll ever get tore up?
Mercy, I don't know how many years I kept that doll, James. She was dressed in pink, and she was about 1.5 feet tall. She was a big dolly, and I loved her. So help me.
What was your favorite song? Can you sing it for me?
Woo. Let's see. Well, let's see. Let's see. I want to be a sunbeam for Jesus and shine for Him each day, in every way trying to please Him, at home, at school, at play. A sunbeam, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam. A sunbeam, I'll be a sunbeam for Him. Did you like that little song?
Yes.
Me too.
Good one.
What was your fondest childhood memory?
I had so many. Oh, by the way, since you're a fisherman, I'll tell you about my first catch. Me and Wade went to the tan bar down to Nolan's Creek, and we were standing under a big old tree, and I caught my first rainbow trout. It was about 7-8 inches long. And buddy,
That ain't 7-8 inches long.
huh?
It's like 10 and 11.
10 or 11? Well,
8 and
sometimes we
7.
measure them too big, son.
8 and 7's like about right there.
You ever measure?
Hey, she learned to lie like Pops. Leave her alone.
8 and 7's about that big.
Oh, well, that's okay.
10 and 11's about that
That
big.
was one
That was a good
one
one.
good memory.
Okay.
I thought you'd like that.
Can you tell me anything about your mother's parents?
Oh, yeah. My grandmother, Whiteside, name was Jane, and my grandfather, Whiteside, was John Ulysses. And I used to see him at reunions, but after Grandpa Whiteside fell off of the building and then in a few days he died, well then Grandmother Whiteside came and stayed with us. Her name was, did I tell you Jane? Her name was Jane. Okay. Martha Jane. By the way, I was named after her too. Anyway, Martha Jane. One funny thing, she sat at the end of the table, sort of like I am, and I'd say, Grandma, that was after she had a stroke. I'd say, Grandma, let me sit in your lap. Why? You might spill me. And I always laughed at her for saying that. She was a good little grandmother. She was still with my mother when we moved away to Virginia. And Grandpa Whiteside. I never knew my grandparents on my daddy's side. They died before I was born.
Do you like to do plays when you were grown up?
Growing up. Do plays, meaning dramas and play. Every time I tried out, James, I got the part. That's the truth. Being at the Round Hill School, we would practice our dramas and our plays to go to Bryson City schools so we could so we could entertain them for May Day or Field Day. I believe they called it Field Day. And we had competition, you know. One time I remember, James, one time I remember I had a recitation. Do you know what a recitation is?
No.
You don't know? Let's see. Well, I'll just show you. Pretend like I'm an old man now. You know my daughter Nancy? She's an awful uncommon smart gal, and she takes to learning just as natural as a gosling takes to water, and she can get her lessons faster than I can chaw tobacco. She come home telling me that the sun never rose or set, and that the earth turned upside down every day, and all that tomfoolery. And I determined, I said that Nancy should leave that school. So I allowed I'd have a little fun. Went over next morning before school took up. And I said, Mr. McQuillister, we've employed you to learn our young'uns, ain't we? And he said, well, yes. And he asked me to stay a while and hear the children recite their lessons. So that sort of pacified me. I went in the next morning before school took up. And he asked me to have a chair. I took a chair and sat down, and it come Nancy's turn to say her lesson. She said it's spry, but I was shocked, James. She said, I love, you love, he love, we love, you love, they love. I interfered, and I said, who do you love, Nancy? She interfered, and the schoolmaster interfered and said he'd explain when Nancy finished her lesson. So they went, the next thing was spelling. She did it quite exceedingly, but I was shocked. Anyway, I says, who do you love, Nancy? Schoolmaster interfered and said he'd explain. So I sat back down while Nancy went on with her awful love talk. She said, we will love, you will love, they will love. I interfered and determined that Nancy should leave that school. And Mr. McQuillister tried to interfere, but I wouldn't let him. I kicked him off the door and off the doorstep, and then I slammed the door in his face. Now, if you know of any rather oldish men in your neighborhood that don't teach grammar, we'd be glad you'd send him up. But in the future, we'll be careful about employers. Young schoolmasters will not do, especially if they teach grammar.
Did your dad like your husband?
Well, my dad loved my husband after a while. But what he said when I said we're going to get married, well, you better come on back home and go to school like your mammy wanted you to do. Well, it so happened one time we heard that Wade, who was a soldier, was coming home. So Pops had gone to the movies, James. Pops had gone to the movies. And Luther and me hopped the bus. I had one $50 bill in Popsy's locker. We had a locker to put in the bed. You know what a locker is? A trunk. And I know you want to hear this, don't you? And anyway, this $50 bill got hung in billfold zipper and got tore. So Luther and me caught the city bus and went down and caught it wasn't Greyhound back then. Maybe it was. Anyhow, then we caught another bus during the war, and we headed for Bryson City to see Wade. We just heard he was or coming home after being wounded. Did you know there's so many people on the bus we had to stand up most of the way? Anyway, poor little Pops. There I'd taken the money and gone. But we got over it. And that was the same year that Aunt Kate Howard died. And we had visitation for her. They used to just lay them out on the bed and let people visit if they wanted to. Anyhow, that's what my brother Byron came up flying to Virginia thinking he would talk me out of getting married. And I met him, caught the bus and went to the depot then and met him and walked him back to my house. He said, "Well, you already done it, ain't you, Cedric?" And then, guess what? Before he left, he showed me the rings. He was going to be married to Irene Hunter. And that's 2 weddings. Anyway, you're a dandy little newsman. I've clattered for 30 minutes or longer.
That'll end our
Hmm?
podcast.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're good at that. Love you, Jamesy, forever and always. Okay.